Before the Copernican revolution, astronomers mapped the night sky using the Earth-centric Ptolemaic model. When observed planetary orbits deviated from perfect circles, they didn't rethink their premise. They invented epicycles, circles within circles, to force the math to match their telescopes. The standard model is a modern epicycle. Quantum field theory calculates subatomic scattering probabilities with incredible precision, but it cannot mechanically build a planet. When the predictive equations fail to match the physical sky, physicists invent mathematical patches, dark matter, dark energy, and singularities to bridge the gap. The space compression model adopts a strict mandate: keep the empirical evidence, but discard the ontology. We do not require the endless, abstract parameters of legacy physics. Instead of an empty void, space is a structured superfluid medium. It possesses a continuous inward pressure, governed entirely by density, volume, and geometric compression. Judging a complete mechanical blueprint by the metrics of an incomplete statistical ledger is a logical failure. The universe must be evaluated on its mechanical scalability, not its adherence to curve-fitted abstractions. We start at the true zero state of the universe, an eternal continuum of infinite volume and absolute zero density. This uncompressed expanse possesses potential mass, but zero initial weight. Because this fluid substrate is boundless, its sheer volume generates a constant macroscopic inward pressure across the entire medium. This uniform geometric pressure forces the zero-density space to localize. Distributed equally across all directions, it physically defaults to a single mathematically perfect shape: the sphere. Structure is derived directly from the mechanical tension of the space itself. The universe is a self-initiating engine of spatial reconfiguration, completely removing the mechanical necessity for an external explosive catalyst. When the inward pressure on a localized region exceeds its tension threshold, a three-step reconfiguration occurs. The space compresses to its critical limit, physically fractures into radial arcs, and violently recoils inward. Because the substrate is frictionless and cannot tear discontinuously, this recoil is self-propagating. Each fracture pulls the subsequent layer with it, forging an infinite Russian doll architecture of nested density spheres. This schematic maps the structural consequence of that collapse. On the right, we track the axes labeled density inverse to volume continuum. As the spatial medium is forced into tighter spherical boundaries, the physical volume decreases. The surface tension and internal density proportionally spike. This continuous layering mechanism bridges a century-old observational gap. It explains exactly how space operates simultaneously as a frictionless continuous substrate and as a localized collection of discrete, layered objects. At the extreme limits of spatial compression, spherical geometry breaks down. The collapsed space folds and ejects a two-dimensional unit of pure density, completely lacking free volume. This is the smarticle. To survive the crushing inward pressure of the medium, this flat disk must continuously spin. Rotating at light speed, it asserts a three-dimensional spherical footprint. To propagate forward through a viscous medium while maintaining that volume, it must physically drill through the substrate. This mandates a strict helical corkscrew trajectory, defined by the hypotenuse of its rotational and forward velocities. The intake for this system is the central compression core, or CCC. It acts as a localized one-way mechanical nozzle, actively pulling the surrounding space inward to manufacture these smarticle units. Standard physics relies on the theoretical Yang-Mills mass gap to explain why particles have positive mass. Here, mass is kinetic gridlock. When incoming spatial flow violently decelerates and is trapped within the CCC funnel, that captured momentum manifests as physical inertia. As the CCC consumes the local medium to build mass, it creates a volume deficit. The surrounding space violently rushes in to fill the void. This inward rushing replacement flow is the precise physical mechanism of universal gravitation. Apply this exact fluid dynamic to a macro-scale star. A star is a high-capacity spatial pump, where trillions of central compression cores pull space inward to forge new atomic structures. When these fully formed atoms are ejected, they actively pull space into their own autonomous funnels. To maintain their geometric footprint, they violently expand, physically pushing back against the incoming replacement flow. This push-pull hydraulic cycle produces an outward kinetic pressure. We observe this directly in the 2-kilometer radial expansion of the Sun during the solar cycle. Universal expansion is the cumulative mechanical exhaust of trillions of stellar engines. This architecture scales directly to galactic rotation. Planets are encapsulated within pressurized stellar bubbles, which surf inside massive, high-density spatial envelopes generated by the supermassive galactic core. Rapid rotation does not tear a galaxy apart, because the entire system is mechanically locked within these pressurized fluid boundaries. Dark matter is the optical illusion born from observing the structural integrity of this nested containment, while remaining blind to the compressed walls of space holding it together. Standard microscopic tools blast subatomic structures with high-energy laser lattices, physically freezing the kinetic engines they attempt to observe. To see the mechanics natively, we use atomic gravitational lensing. Over a 9-year study, direct projections were captured using focal saturation. By locking a mobile sensor to a precise 1.0 millimeter focal plane, seen here targeting a glass vial of heavy metals isolated against a caliper, we leverage the extreme spatial gradient to project its internal mechanics. These projections are rigorously differentiated from standard optical artifacts. Static lens anomalies, like the onion ring bokeh and diffraction patterns shown in panels A and B, are strictly governed by the geometry of the lens hardware. These true atomic projections exhibit complete structural autonomy. When the camera pans laterally, the internal atomic cores display a gyroturn precession, maintaining a 3-dimensional volumetric depth entirely independent of the glass. This sequence documents the exact phase shift. The blinding, localized photonic glare of the flash in panel A transitions, resolving into multiple distinct structural lattices in panels E and F as focal saturation is achieved. Capturing this specific 1.0 millimeter projection constant across 60 high-purity elements demonstrates that atomic invisibility was merely a hardware limitation of previous detection methodology, not a fundamental physical boundary. The double-slit experiment is considered the ultimate proof of quantum probability waves, but under the space compression model, a particle never exists as a statistical cloud in multiple places at once. When physically constrained between two boundaries, the space itself is squeezed, creating a localized lens with a rigid geometric arc. An approaching electron passes through a specific segment, where it is deterministically deflected down a defined corridor we call a gravity gate. These gravity gate pathways terminate in physical impact as solid particles ride the deflection arcs and crash directly into the silicon grid of the CMOS sensor to form the famous interference pattern. By replacing statistical ghosts with measurable spatial geometry, the mathematical anomalies vanish. From the deterministic impact on a subatomic sensor to the dense structural nodes of the cosmic web, the universe operates as a singular, bounded hydraulic engine, perfecting its resonance across all scales.